Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 9th XYZ live stream. And today we have a very special guest in Independent Man, the YouTuber I'm sure we all know. Independent Man, welcome.
How are you?
Great. And obviously we have David Hiscox. Now, before we get started, how's it going, mate? Before we get started, there was a pretty big week in football. A big gain there by Melbourne.
I heard that Maxi Gawn had the I was listening. Maxi Gawn had the ball with 8 seconds to go. Set shot.
15 meters out directly in front. Yeah. Tough kick. He missed.
Oh, you know, I've missed those sorts of shots before, so I can't judge.
Yeah. I mean, he's a professional, so you think he'd do a little bit better than that. But I don't know. I guess 15 meters out directly in front, anyone could miss it.
Yeah, maybe he should have, tried to tamper with the ball.
Yeah, that's it. Isn't that funny? How much more of that's a bigger scandal than pretty much anything. Bigger scandal than Dan Andrews' corruption.
I find it amazing. Like at the moment, we've currently got a poll up on the XYZ. We've had nearly 1,000 respondents to the question: should the Australian cricketers boycott South Africa over everything that's going on in South Africa? And so it almost feels like if we put up a result of that, because 900 people have voted yes, we should boycott the South African tour because of what's happening with South African farmers. People are going to think it's all because of the ball tampering.
Yes, so I mean, plenty of time to talk about sport, but
yeah.
So today we obviously have all our issues. Today we're going to be talking about a number of things. The big issue, the big discussion point on YouTube and around the internet is obviously Count Dankula's conviction, and we'll also be getting to the Facebook data scandal. That's another big one, and we'll finish up with cryptocurrencies. But yeah, or we might do cryptocurrencies before Facebook, depending on what people want to do. But first up, obviously, the Count Dankula court conviction. Independent Man, you did a video on this about 5 days ago, I believe. So
yeah,
just interested to get sort of a few more of your thoughts on that. Where do you think it's going to go there? Do you have any idea of where maybe he's going to? What do you think they'll actually end up doing in terms of the conviction, and what do you think this all means?
Well, I mean, I think Count Dankula is just like a canary in the coal mine. I think it's 8 or 9 people are being arrested every week or is it a day? Every day, every day in the UK for some kind of online hate speech, whatever form that takes. So he's the high profile case, but I mean, there literally is thousands of cases that you don't know that are going on, and I just find this. I don't understand this obsession with trying to police what people say, as opposed to, for example, I put in my video, we have to get used to bollards in the street in cities. That's just, suck that up and get used to it. Terrorism, for example, this is something we need to live with. But hate speech, no, we can't have that. Douglas Murray talks about this, maybe if you've read his book, The Strange Death of Europe, or if you've heard him speak, he talks about how the government has become very good at coming down on second-order effects. So what happens is, a terrorist attack happens, and the first thing is everybody comes out and says, let's sing, John Lennon or song, or Don't Look Back in Anger or some bullshit. And, the worst possible thing that can happen is that someone says something nasty about Muslims, right? And the government wants to come down heavily on that rather than on the terrorism itself, and have a open discussion about the problem of enclaves building up in certain regions and areas. And I think one of the best statistics that came out from Douglas Murray was that 9 out of 10 convicted Muslim terrorists in the UK come from communities where there's more than 25% concentration of Muslims. So what that tells you is a lack of integration breeds terrorism. And I know I'm getting off the track there, but that's the kind of discussions you should be allowed to have. But of course, this focus on hate speech means that you can't have those kinds of discussions. And sure, there's people out there saying quote unquote hateful things. I mean, I think hate speech is a bullshit concept to start with, but there's plenty of people saying rude shit, but is that the real problem? Is the real problem that someone called someone something racist on the internet, or is the real problem, a lack of immigration problem? I mean, you can't. I don't know. If you look back through history, you can't control speech and what people say. You'll just force that kind of speech underground.
And, I think someone mentioned, I can't remember where I heard it, but even the Gulag Archipelago came out in the Soviet Union. So even the most authoritarian state in history couldn't suppress free speech to the point that no ideas were getting out. So it's kind of a fool's errand in trying to suppress this kind of speech. And I don't know why they keep doing it, because every time they do something like this, the people that they target, especially if there's someone like a high-profile individual, like Tommy Robinson or now Count Dankula, who's famous because of this video, it always just makes them more popular. So I don't understand what they think they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, look at the profile that Lauren Southern now has just from being banned. In the UK, or Martin Sellner. Who's ever heard of Martin Sellner in the UK? I guess very few people, but now they have, and Brittany Pettibone. So it just seeks to raise the profile of those people, and it makes certain groups of people just more suspicious about their own government. Why are you trying to keep these people out? I mean, what are you so scared of what they have to say for? And as far as the law, what's going to happen in the court? I mean, I mean, it appears to me, if the judge was so willing to ignore context, and intention, because they really had to do some backflips to sort of ignore the context that was quite clear in his joke, and ignore his obvious intention. That who knows what they'll do when it comes to sentencing? Will they err on the side of not wanting to cause a scandal by just suspending a sentence and asking for community service or something, or will they go further than that? Because I mean, if they go further than that, it's going to create an even bigger shitstorm, I would have thought.
Well, the punishment is the process in a situation like this. Yeah,
it's like the QUT students in the 18C. I mean. Yeah. Exactly like that. I mean, this has been going on for 2 years, right? At this point, I think.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I just saw an interview that he did with Tommy Robinson today, where even YouTube have said that the video is fine. Like, they didn't like it, but it was obviously a joke. And anyone who can see it, anyone who sees the videos knows it's a joke, and it's hilarious too. It's really funny because the dog's so cute. And it does the little paw thing. So
is it in restricted mode, or can you just view it normally?
I actually haven't checked, because I didn't bother, because I figured it had been taken off YouTube.
There are a lot of mirrors have been made. There are heaps of mirrors of it, quite a few. Yeah. It's not that hard to get. What's really funny as well is he's not even a conservative. The guy's actually a socialist. So they just their own.
He's got a tad of the hammer and sickle, I think, but he did say that was when he was young and stupid. So I think he's renounced that, but he's far from a right winger, I would say.
Yeah.
It's funny that I think the old right wing, left wing dichotomy hopefully it's dying, because I think there's a lot of error in it as well. In that a lot of the people that the media and the academia and all that kind of thing call right wing are actually just old school leftists with views that are out of fashion. A lot of them are socialists anyway. Anyone they call a neo-Nazi is a socialist. So I don't know why they're called far right. It's pure propaganda.
Yeah, well, anyone right of the left pole. That's the way it is. I mean, so they reside at the left pole. Anyone right of that is you start out with. I mean, the least bad thing you get called is a racist, and then it's alt-right, and then it's fascist, and then it's Nazi, isn't it? So I mean, that's just. And it's an ever shrinking number of people that aren't that, the moment you step out of line, which is why it kind of eats itself. And I think you're right about the left-right divide. I think perhaps it's getting a bit old. Today it's more of authoritarian, libertarian, people that believe in freedom and people who don't, people who believe that you can't. It is more and more obvious, I think, that out of touch elites don't trust their publics. I mean, look at the response to Brexit. You know, the elite was all against it. The people voted against it, and they're doing their best to turn it back. They just don't trust their own public to make decisions. I think that's the case.
Yeah, they were pretty disappointed when it came to Brexit, and then Donald Trump happened soon after that. So I think they're spooked, and they're trying to do all they can to silence the opposition voices. But it's like, well, as you mentioned, it doesn't really work. I just wanted to bring something up. Now, Dave, you're a Ayn Rand fan, correct?
Yeah.
So you're a big fan of Ayn Rand.
Not as much as I used to, but like she's still been an inspiration. Like she's it's one of the things that really inspired me to get going. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've actually never read Ayn Rand, but I believe I think it was a quote. I'm pretty sure it was her. You can stop me if I'm wrong, but in one of her books, one of her characters sort of talks about how if there aren't people committing crimes, then the state will make laws so that everyone becomes a criminal. That way they can continue to police crimes. And that's how, sort of how the authoritarian state evolves. That was Ayn Rand too. I think that was one of her books. Yeah.
That one, I don't know. I've read Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah. Well,
that's a very good question. Yeah.
Well, that kind of happens in Atlas Shrugged because anyone who doesn't go along with the government system is basically criminalized. And that's why anyone worth any value takes off to the valley. I forget what it's called in Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a 1,000-page book, and it doesn't need to be, quite honestly. She could have cut that down.
Yeah, there are some bits where I was explaining to somebody the other night that like she does go on sort of tangents. Like there's bits where like she tries to rationalize why sort of like Dagny Taggart, the main character, likes to sort of sleep around. She goes on for about 10 pages, which I think could just be done in one sentence.
I got the feeling that she was Dagny Taggart was her idealized, an idealized version of herself. That's how she would have liked to have seen herself, and it was just. Yeah, it was too much. It was romanticized too much.
What I did like about Dagny Taggart, though, because like the hero and the guy who, like in Atlas Shrugged, you have John Galt, who goes around convincing all the people who make any kind of contribution to society to pull out of society and to pull their contribution out of society, and then the economy collapses because of that. And the argument that he makes is that if they don't do that, then the government is just going to kill them slowly. And so if they pull themselves out now, they'll actually be able to keep what they have, and they might be able to, and B, they might be able to see civilization be restored. But I'm more inspired by the idea of Dagny Taggart like fighting this system as hard as she can, because if the only way of defeating a socialist system is to actually speed up the process of the socialist system, you're basically going to kill like millions of people, because you're actually encouraging the socialist system's effects. You know what I mean? Mm. So it's actually better to actually fight against that socialist system. It could cost less lives.
Mm. Yeah, I just think she's a bit extreme for my liking. That, you know, basically everybody acts in their own self-interest. There's no such thing as empathy or altruism. And I think that's just a little bit too extreme for me, but I do appreciate the message she had in there.
Mm. So I'll just mention something in chat. Like Ian has said that the Scottish working class is automatically a socialist until they become minted. So I don't know how accurate that is, but it sounds about right.
Well, I mean that's what Mark Latham said about the Labor Party in this country, is that they were all for the worst thing that ever happened to them is they got wealthy. You know, you know, in the 80s, I mean, when I was a kid, when Hawke got elected, and you know, he really was the voice of the working class. That's what he was supposed to represent, and they did represent. But you know, you got to remember the Labor Party in the 80s and 90s were progressive in the old-fashioned sense. They deregulated markets. They floated the dollar. They made the wage system more flexible. You know, they They lowered the power of unions. That's all reversed today. That they talk about raising taxes. They cut taxes back then. They talk about, you know, the unions are more powerful now. It's a different type of Labor Party, and yeah, I think it's because they got wealthy. Some of them.
It's actually a really strange change, because I mean, you would have been old enough to remember the Hawke Keating sort of era. That was about when I was born. The earliest I can remember of politics is John Howard. You know, because I was about 11, 12 when he got elected, and you know, everything you get is Labor. You know, the Labor debt. The Labor had high interest rates, and you know, then John Howard brought the debt down. It's like, okay, and you look back on that situation now, and it's like, well, if the ALP under Bob Hawke and Paul Keating ran as a separate party now, it would be the party that, you know, I'd probably vote for them over any of the other major parties. But then back in the day, like, well, why would you want to vote for the left-wing ALP, you know, pinko latte socialists? But they're a lot better. They're a better option than any of the people that we have in charge at the moment, which is interesting.
I've said for some time, I think that what's his name? Fucking Turnbull. Turnbull is to the left of Paul Keating, I think. Politically.
The Liberal Party is to the left of where of Labor. Yeah, back in the 80s. It's what happens is that the culture keeps moving to the left, and then the politics basically just enshrines in law what's going on in the culture. Like, you can see that in terms of the gay marriage debate. Like 20 years ago when I was at university, like it was fringe. Like the craziest of the crazy lecturers at my university would talk about that, and they would talk about sort of the crazy stuff about gender identity as well. And now it's front and center in terms of our politics. And so, like, if it keeps continuing as it is, in 10 years' time, it'll be a fundamental conservative position to support gay marriage. We've really got to like fight that drift of the culture, because the political parties just go along with it.
Yeah, well, who was it that said politics is downstream from culture? That's a famous one that gets brandied around the internet, and I always forget who actually said it. But that's why it's
Breitbart.
Oh, that was the Breitbart guy, yeah.
That was Breitbart.
Well, it actually was Breitbart, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So sometimes I forget these things, but it's a very accurate statement, because when you think about it, culture is what people are affected by most. Like, people are affected by who wins their match on the footy team, even if they're a dirty Melbourne supporter, or, you know, what movie they're going to go and see, or the music that they listen to. And if the musicians and the footy play stuff are going in a certain direction, then people will tend to follow it. But then now that we've got this, you know, this massive culture of censorship, especially around issues like Count Dankula and Tommy Robinson and all that kind of thing, I think people are sort of starting to turn around and think, well, wait a minute, I'm not a huge fan of that. And the culture, like the culture is sort of starting to fight back against this this elite intolerance, like the intolerance of the people up the top. So
it's
I think
now cool to be conservative, yes.
Yeah, that's true. It is actually become counterculture and cool to be conservative. Like, did you see Paul Joseph Watson's latest video? Like, he released it today?
No.
It's hilarious, because you know how Sadiq Khan's come out and started reading these mean tweets. It's like, you know, he does the mean tweet thing, and he's like, oh, I'm so sad, you know, imagine, think of the children and all that kind of thing. Paul Joseph Watson comes out and reads some of the mean tweets he's been getting, and they're so bad. Yeah. They are. Like, he's like, what do you mean Islam isn't a religion of peace? If you don't think Islam's a religion of peace, then I'm going to cut your neck off. It's like, and he just
it's not the first time that one's been said, won't be the last.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exactly right. And he does it, but he does it so well. He's on one hand like a meme lord, but on the other hand, an amazing political commentator, and he mixes it together. And that's the thing, like, conservatives, the right, libertarians, like the new sort of liberty movement have the meme culture and the internet culture. And because the left can't laugh at themselves anymore, it's sort of, it means that they're just going to keep ceding that ground, which is probably why the left want to censor the internet so vehemently, and probably why they went after Count Dankula and all that kind of, and these people, because they know that these are big internet personalities, and that's where the culture is being fought at, because the cultures that people don't really focus on the cult, like, you know, the footy. Like, well, I'm a big footy fan, obviously, and it's so annoying every time they have another, you know, let's do this special round and that special round. And I actually had a guy who was organising the Dreamtime round. The celebration and the parade, you know, they do the dancing show and all that kind of thing. And here's the thing, like, I've got nothing against a show, like, if you want to do a show and all that kind of thing, but my problem is them shoving this political correctness and this, you know, this nonsense political agenda down our throat. And if you speak out against it, then all of a sudden you're a racist, or, you know, you're somehow guilty of wrongthink because you disagree with the idea that there should be a Dreamtime round. I mean, I don't think there should be a Dreamtime round. I think that we should just be out there and celebrating people's achievement on the field, and, you know, awarding people honours based on that achievement on the field.
Well, you know, people just want to go and watch the fucking football. Now, you can't.
Exactly.
If you're in a workplace now in a big company, you're probably getting diversity sort of training shoved down your throat and all that kind of bullshit. So you go out on a weekend away from work to watch the footy. And what do you got to do? You got to wear a red ribbon or something else, or appreciate Indigenous culture or something. It's like, fuck, I just want to watch the football. Can I do that? Yeah.
It's funny, and I told the guy who was a passenger in the car when I was driving, and he didn't like it. Like, he didn't say much, but you could tell by he was friendly at first, and I've said, mate, like, I just want to watch the football. I don't need this kind of politics shoved down my throat. And I told him, because I wasn't going to miss this opportunity to say exactly how I felt to someone who was organising it and on the inside. And you could tell he didn't like it. Even though I was polite. I was like, mate, I'm sure you'll do a really good job with the show. I'm sure it'll be a nice show, but I just don't like the agenda. That's all. Yeah. It's the politics I'm against, not the actual performance.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a great example of how the left will never leave you alone. Like, they won't let us have our own spaces. They won't let men have male-only spaces, like whether it's on gaming. They won't let you have a politically free space like football. Like, they just work their way into every aspect of society just to spread their agenda. Like, there's literally no way that you can get out of it unless you remove yourself from society.
Did you guys see Bettina Arndt's got a new video out? And it's about how, you know, the men's sheds. Remember, you know, the men's sheds that are set up? You know what they are? It's a network. Oh, you haven't heard? The men's sheds are set up around Australia, and they're basically, you can go in there, and they're just for men only, and they're supposed to help people out that are, you know, potentially suicidal or depressed or something like that. And you go in there, and there's some old bloke in there, and he can teach you, you know, a trade or something, or show you, you know, you work on something. Well, anyway, so what they've done in Sydney, of course, some virtue signaling dickhead is now in charge of the men's sheds, and he's called it the Shed, and women are allowed now. Yeah.
So men can't have their own space. It's actually disgusting if you really think about it. It's really horrendous, because it's sort of saying that you're not allowed to express yourself as a man, and any expression of masculinity is somehow against society or somehow needs to be shamed. It's pretty bad. And it's, you think about what that message that sends to young boys and kids who hear it, who maybe don't have a strong male role model in their life. So they hear it and they believe it. And it's like, well, I'm a boy, I should be ashamed of being a boy. And they grow up and turn into soy addicts. So it's like,
well, this is why the as you said about the culture, the politicians, bipartisan support, have adopted this view, which is that gender equality is now equal to equality of outcome and equal representation. And so you have bipartisan support by Turnbull and Shorten across the board. Turnbull stood up the other day on International Women's Day and said, we've got a long way to go for gender equality. Now, as far as I'm concerned, you have gender equality. You have equality under the law, and you have equality of opportunity. And just because there aren't equal outcomes, or there's not 50% of the politicians are not women, that's got nothing to do with equality. That's down to life choices that people make. But, you know, you have this movement. And I can tell you, it's rife through universities. I just put out a video 10 minutes before we went online about the University of Queensland's hiring policies now. They're basically just shoehorning women in there because there's, and this is in STEM fields, right? The last bastion of where men actually dominate anything at university, but no, we've got to push them out of there as well. And so if you end up getting gender parity in STEM fields, you're going to be left with about 25% male participation at university.
You're going to have bridges which fall down on the first day, yeah?
It's funny because I always, like, I used to get into a debate regularly with this guy. It's a bloke I know in real life. Haven't seen him for a while, thank God. But I'd always get into Facebook debates on him about these issues. And I'd always ask him, what evidence do you have of legal inequality or some right that that men have that women don't? Yeah. And you never get an answer. It's always distract, ad hominem, character assassination, all the, all those things. So
yeah, well, you get answers. You get answers like women don't have the right not to be beaten up in their own home. Like that. Oh. That's not a fucking right, idiot. I know.
It's all that kind of thing. So we'll just now. Do you, independent man? So you said you've got basically another half an hour. Which would you rather talk about cryptocurrencies or the Facebook scandal?
Oh, I don't mind. We could do crypto. We could do both because I don't know much about cryptos. I can give you my view on it.
Let's keep going with Facebook because we're on the free speech angle and it's that information more kind of.
Yeah, sure. So, but before we go on, Gary does have a really quick question. What do you think will happen to Count Dankula? Like, he's going to be sentenced in mid-April, but do you think, what do you think is actually going to happen? Like, just a prediction, obviously, I
have no insight. So, like I said, I think if they want to make an example, then that's what they do because it seemed they tried very hard to convict him by ignoring context and intention. Or they could realise the shitstorm that it might breed and just give him some kind of suspended sentence. I think also, though.
So this is just a stab in the dark based on just my gut instinct. I think they're so clueless that they're going to give him like a 6-month prison sentence or some sort of 6 month, with a GPS device on his leg or some sort of sentence like that. I think they're going to really do that and just compound the issue even further because I genuinely don't think that the English establishment are listening. I just don't think that they've got their ears open. I don't think they are understanding the feeling in the general public. So I think they're just going to do something that's going to alienate them all. But I hope that they choose. I hope they back down and they rescind hate speech laws and all that kind of thing. But my gut instinct says it's going to go the other way. So Dave, you want to talk about the Facebook data breach? Okay, so what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, people who are fans of my work know that I don't use Facebook, and yesterday I just put out, I just posted on my Facebook, will be for the last time unless I find something else to destroy Facebook and share that first, but I'm going to delete my Facebook account tomorrow. Now, I previously said that I just wasn't going to use it anymore because I was sick of their censorship. It's just too much censorship, and especially with this new algorithm thing where conservative pages and accounts, their engagements dropped off while leftist accounts have gone up. I mean, it's just not on. And the fact that they censor people, if you have an opinion they don't like, they'll ban you for 30 days. I mean, 30 days. And the thing is, Facebook, the main utility of Facebook is the Messenger app. And when they put Facebook jail, you can't use the Messenger app. So I mean, at least on Twitter, you can use the Messenger app if they ban you, but you can't even use the main thing that you use Facebook for. And this is a way that we actually communicate with people. So I think it's horrendous the way they go about things. And now with this data breach, and I mean, it's the second time it's happened. And there was another leak, which is what I shared yesterday, where Mark Zuckerberg's basically laughing at people for giving them all his information. I just don't think that they are worthy of being used as it's a crap site anyway. It's boring because they censor it.
I've never understood the attraction of Facebook. I mean, the only reason I have Facebook is to put up my videos on another platform to reach, another sort of audience. I have a fan page, whatever you call them, an independent man page. My actual own Facebook page for myself, I think I've got like 3 friends, and one of them's my brother, and one of and. So I just don't use it. To me, it looks like a site that was made 10 years ago. It just looks ugly. I don't know. I guess I just don't really know how to use it, probably. But
I think, no, continue. Sorry, you go.
I was going to say, I don't know if you saw Elon Musk deleted his Tesla and SpaceX accounts from Facebook. I mean, he probably won't have to do that because Tesla will be bankrupt in a couple of years anyway. But the thing is, those kind of high-profile sort of exits just pile on, I think, the outrage. Because I think here, if you look into that Cambridge Analytica stuff, look, people have been scalping Facebook's data for years. This isn't that new. What I think is new is social mood. Social mood has changed. It's changed in a big way in the last 12 months against social media companies. If you go back 5 years, the sun shone out of Zuckerberg's ass, all right? And social mood today is very, very different. And I tell you what, I think it all comes down to the 2016 election. And they, in Silicon Valley, when they, I watched an interview today with Niall Ferguson, the historian who's written a book that's tangentially related to this, and he said after 2016 election, Silicon Valley, which as we know is very left-wing, said this cannot happen again. Okay, and so you have both sides of politics. I mean, this is probably one of the few things that has bipartisan support in the United States Congress, is some kind of crackdown on social media companies. You don't have you can't use antitrust laws because antitrust laws were they were made for monopolies who raised prices. But I mean, you can't do that with someone like Facebook or Amazon or Google because they've actually, I mean, Google gives shit away for free and Amazon makes everything fucking cheaper. So I don't know how they're going to regulate them, but that's the direction we're moving. But there is something to be said for it. 45% of Americans get their news from their Facebook feed. And yet Facebook is curating what you see based on their own internal politics. Now, they went before Congress and they said, they were asked point blank, Google, Twitter, and Facebook, they were asked point blank, do you have a political bias? They all said no. Now, but that's the wrong question. It's not, do you have a political bias? It is, you have a cultural bias within your companies. You are all left-wing. I don't know if you've been following the James Damore court case and associated cases. Is a clear left-wing bias in all of these companies. So it doesn't matter the policies you come out with. So YouTube says we apply the policies equally. I mean, I agree, they probably do apply the policies equally, but the thing is the culture infects those policies. So if you are right of center, I mean, you don't have to be right, you just have to be anti-social justice, and you're going to end up on the wrong side of the censor. And so I think the real question is, these companies have cultural biases built into them. And so you are going to get curated news that is not fair, or for want of a better word, open. People can access what they want. They're going to score, conservative news lower on the totem pole than others. I mean, you have the Southern Poverty Law Center involved in deciding what is and isn't hate speech. And the Southern Poverty Law Center's lost all credibility, I think, at this point. So this is the big question. I mean, I'm libertarian, basically, and I don't like regulating much of anything. But it's really hard to see how companies like this, who are not subject to, say, FCC regulations like a TV station, there's no regulations like radio stations or newspapers. They're pretty much free to publish whatever they like, as long as it's not copyright. And I don't know. They have to invent some new laws or something, but it's moving in the direction of regulation.
What I honestly think, because they're American companies, so there's a pretty easy fix, and all they have to do is expand the First Amendment to include social media companies. So the social media companies aren't able to censor you based on your political opinion, and that should include algorithmically as well. So what a couple of people I've heard have proposed, which I thought was a really good idea, is setting up a Bill of Rights. Everyone's heard the Internet Bill of Rights, but as part of this Bill of Rights, these companies have to say, we will not algorithmically manipulate news and content based on political biases, and we will open up our algorithms to be audited by a regulator, and if the regulator finds that they are like the regulator will tell them these are algorithmically favoring one side or the other, and if they are, they have to fix it. And if they refuse to sign on to that, then they'll be liable for the content that gets put onto their sites, like all of it. In that, you know, there's the Communications Decency Act. Was it? I think it might have been you might have actually mentioned it in one of your videos, but I saw it was Ted Cruz. He mentioned it in that hearing with those 3 social media companies, where they might fall afoul of it if they censor too much, because it makes logical sense. If Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are manipulating their site to favor one group of people over another, or they're taking channels down, or they're taking accounts down because they don't like the politics of them, then that means they're taking a hands-on approach in moderation. Therefore, theoretically, they could be liable for the stuff that they don't remove. So if you're willing to remove like a whole lot of content because you don't like it, then that means if someone puts up something that's criminal, then they could theoretically be liable for that. And I think Stephen Crowder is actually suing Twitter over that, because they allowed a genuinely defamatory group of posts about him up there for a long time. It worked so well that some professor used it in his lectures to prove that Stephen Crowder was a racist or something like that. So Twitter have allowed that up there. They've reported it. Twitter have said, no, that's okay. But then Twitter have then gone and done this whole lot of other stuff, which they'll be suing for as well. So I would imagine they may be suing Twitter as for defamation for that. Because, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you're sort of at least half around defamation law. If you reprint something, if you're in the newspaper and you reprint an allegation that's defamatory, then you are liable for that defamation. So if social media are allowing defamatory material up there whilst they have shown an inclination to censor other material, then they could well be liable for defamatory posts that they don't take down.
I just don't know how you could police that, because, I mean, a newspaper, you know, it's a very finite amount of words and stories is printed to go through an editorial process. But, I mean, YouTube is, you know, millions of hours being uploaded every day, and the algorithm doesn't work. I mean, I know that as a content creator, the things that get demonetized, you know, you wouldn't believe. Just, you know, for whatever. I mean, you don't even know why half the time. And so, and I doubt Twitter has an algorithm that's smart enough to you know, to know what's legit and what's not. And I just don't know if this. I'm very skeptical of this idea that the First Amendment can be extended to private companies. It seems like a bit of a stretch to me. It just seems they're a private company. I don't see how it applies. I know what people are saying. Oh, they're like public utilities. This is like the new public square because it's the internet and they control. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I actually did this. I did a video about it about 2 weeks ago. The thing is, I mean, look, yeah, they are private companies, but they built themselves based on saying they were platforms for everyone. So YouTube, their entire brand, like their entire sales pitch was come and broadcast yourself. Twitter, we're a platform for everyone. Facebook, come and join. Everyone can join. If you then join them and then build a following, you know, you get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers, or even hundreds of followers. If you've come there based on that assumption, and then they change the rules and say, no, you're against the rules, new rules that we set up now, that's in essence, like, I think it in essence is a breach of it's a breach of an agreement, if not a breach of a contract, at its fundamental core. So I think that's important that the rights of creators on social media are respected, because social media value, like the value of a social media company, is based on the users. So you as a creator are adding value to YouTube. So if they were to then, like, so you've helped YouTube grow. I mean, you're a relatively large creator compared to most, but, you know, compared to others, you're smaller. But even that being said, you've still built up YouTube. People have come to YouTube because you are there. Therefore, remove your channel, they would be breaching an agreement that they had with you, because if so long as you haven't broken the law. I mean, if you go out and you break the law and you're sending threats and all that kind of stuff, then stiff. But the fact that you've built that channel, I genuinely believe that channel is your property and they shouldn't be allowed to remove it. In terms of demonetization and all that kind of thing, that's a harder one. I mean, you'd know more about the demonetization. I think you'd probably be more suited to be talking about that, because it affects you a lot more than it affects myself. But I'm more concerned with people taking taking channels down and taking accounts down and removing Twitter accounts, like banning Miley Yiannopoulos from Twitter. I don't think they had the right to ban him from Twitter. First of all, he did nothing wrong. He didn't break the rules, and that's obvious, as he said. Second of all, his account had hundreds of thousands of followers. So what gives them the right to remove something that he created that added value to the platform, and he built it himself? Like with copyright law, if you create something, like you create a new picture, a new character, or a new music or whatever, that automatically belongs to you. Why does a Facebook page or a Twitter page or a YouTube account not automatically belong to you based on that logical reason?
No, I don't think that it's your property. You are living rent-free off YouTube's platform, and I think they get to do whatever they like, pretty much.
I think that's a little bit too draconian or too harsh, because if they said at the start, if they said at the start what the rules were, they can't then change the rules down the track if you've then built it.
Well, they can. That's the point. I mean, they can do that, and they have done that consistently over time, so they can do it.
I mean morally, and I think that the law should be changed to actually stop them from being able to do that. That's my argument. But obviously they can right now.
I'm surprised that they let us go on so long. Honestly, like one of the things that we've really got to take into consideration is that we're in a war. We're in an information war, and the 2016 was basically the right using the left's creations against themselves, and as you pointed out, like in Silicon Valley, they realized, hey, we cannot let this happen again. And so what we're seeing now is just the logical extension of that. Like, they don't care about free speech or anything like that. They just care about winning and instituting their agenda. And everything that we're doing is opposing that. So to me, it's a natural thing. Like, if we can see this sort of going forward, I think what we're going to see is content creators and people opposed to the social justice agenda, people opposed to globalism, we're basically going to hop from platform to platform. And as we get a critical mass on each platform, that platform is then going to be alerted to our presence, sentinel-like, and start taking action, and then people are going to go to the next one. And either we'll just keep going round and round endlessly, or eventually we'll run out of platforms. But the important thing is to build a critical mass of people who are opposed to the agenda to actually stop it in time.
Mm.
Are you on BitChute yet, Independent Man?
No.
Yeah, it's good that all your videos automatically upload there, so it's a great way to stop the censors. I mean, your videos are, in my opinion, are quite moderate. I'm sure if it's social justice, pinko, nose ring feminists saw them, they'd think they were pretty crazy and extreme, but I don't think you're going to run afoul of the YouTube censors anytime soon. But who knows? They could change.
It's only a matter of time.
That's how I feel about it, and that's why I'm not particularly sanguine about my future on YouTube. It's sort of a month-to-month proposition. So this month has been pretty good. I had 2 videos demonetized. That was the Dankula and Lawrence Southern. So there you go, obvious reasons. But when I contested those, they were both remonetized. Of course, you lose the money while they're demonetized. But as you said, I think most of the stuff I put out's fairly well reasoned. It's not, trying to, just yell at people or make fun of them or whatever. But still, I mean, if you want to apply the guidelines strictly enough, you could go through my catalog and find 3 videos and give me 3 community guideline strikes if you wanted to be a Nazi and do that. And I think that the direction of the community guidelines on YouTube are moving in one direction, and that is they're getting narrower and stricter and narrower and stricter. And every time they update them, there's some other category of thing that you can't talk about or you can't do, or it's sensitive or controversial or whatever. So I don't think that's going to go away. I mean, perhaps, maybe, I don't know if the Republicans get their ass handed to them in the midterms, which looks like they might ease up or something, but it's unlikely, I think.
Another thing we have to consider is the way that the left's narrative on what's going on with Facebook at the moment. We have to consider that, because that's the narrative that most of what we might call the normies are getting. At the moment, the what's happened with Facebook is being presented as it's the latest mutation of the fake news meme. Because I've been seeing on the ABC, and I read an article today, and they were presenting it as like they were presenting the information mining of people, of people's information, as being used to sway the result of the 2016 election. So they're like it's in direct. It's completely the opposite of our lived experience on Facebook, because like on XYZ, like we've built it to like 10,000 followers on Facebook, and we, like myself as the editor, like I share it around, and I get regular bans, and I basically just I factor that into like having to deal with Facebook. And even one of the reasons why I got going with the XYZ was I got sick of reading just the stream of all my friends, all my left-wing friends, and all their left-wing stuff. And so I was like, I want to stop arguing with them, and I want to like get the message out. And that was a similar experience to all the people who got involved. Like all our Facebook feed was all just left-wing, left-wing, left-wing. And so the left are presenting this as just like, oh, this is the right wing using Facebook to spread more fake news.
Yeah, and that's the narrative they've decided to run with. See, the beautiful thing for the left about the Facebook data breach is that they can say, aha, this is why we lost the election. You know, this is why, you know, Brexit happened. The bad people got a hold of the utopian connected world that was supposed to be all wonderful, and they used it against us. Yeah, they in nefarious ways, and that's why we need to come in and correct it.
So they're going even further. They're blaming the death of the traditional media on social media. They're blaming it on Google, on Twitter, on Facebook. Even though like when you look up any subject on Google, the first page is all going to be The Guardian, The New York Times, The Age, The Guardian again, The New York Times again.
Well,
they're blaming all of that on the death of the traditional.
It's such bullshit.
Media.
I worked in stockbroking from 1997 to 2001. Now I can tell you, back in 99, 2000, we were already talking then about the destruction of mainstream media. How's it going to happen? Now most people back then, you know, no one really knew how it was going to play out. They couldn't foresee the changes. You know, they couldn't even foresee social media because it wasn't really around yet. But that was already obvious that mainstream media was in decline. The newspapers were losing money hand over fist. If you go back that far, and Fairfax has been in trouble for 20 years, you know. So, you know, this idea that all of a sudden, you know, the right wing got a hold of social media and killed mainstream media is just nonsense.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring one thing else. So someone sort of asked as well if we think that this data breach thing would have been as big if it was used to help Hillary Clinton. And I think it's fairly obvious that if it had been used to help Hillary Clinton, it wouldn't have even been an issue. It probably likely wouldn't have been a triumph.
Would have been a celebration.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure Obama did something very, very similar back in 2008.
Remember Obama was the tech savvy guy that got all the young people out and got the word out, you know?
Exactly. It's all about, see, this is the thing, like it's, you know, if left wing does it, it's fine. The right wing does it, it's the worst thing in the entire world, and we've got to censor it and stop it.
Well, and there is some truth to that evil people can manipulate the internet. Look, Russia did get on to Facebook and plant ads. The Chinese know more about their own citizens because of their ability to use the internet to monitor them. You know, the Chinese now are scanning people's faces walking through train stations and you know, seeing what's what and whether they can arrest them or not. I mean, there are bad ways to use the internet, but this always happens with the new technology. Everybody says, oh, it's going to be wonderful, we're going to connect. I think half of this is, as I said in the beginning, a change in social mood. People are starting to see, actually, it's not good to stay all day on Facebook. People feel miserable. Kids feel miserable. There's studies out there about how kids who spend too much time on it don't feel particularly good. And I think this stuff's going to get exaggerated, possibly into another sort of Me Too panic moment around kids on social media, when really kids are fine on social media if they have some parental controls in place and say, put your phone down and You know, you're not on the internet after 10 o'clock at night and all that kind of stuff. But as I said, I think social mood is going to play a big role in this.
I think you're right as well. Sorry, Dave. I think
yeah, sure.
I think you're right about places like Facebook. I mean, I sort of migrated from Facebook over to Twitter. I think Twitter's hilarious. Like Twitter, I don't know. I have way more fun on Twitter than I ever did on Facebook. It's just so funny because people get because it's all short that people get really angry really quickly. Unlike Facebook, where they actually try to reason out arguments with you. But
so it accelerates the the rage. That's amazing.
Exactly. So it just amuses me so much. But I think long term places like that kind of culture, I think, is going to go by the wayside, and it'll be video platforms like YouTube. I think BitChute and DTube and other places are going to grow because, I mean, as you mentioned, YouTube are adding new rules to their TOS all the time. And I believe that they just made, I didn't actually see the exact rule, but they made gun-related content now against the rules, or certain gun-related content against the rules, which means aren't there thousands of channels that are pretty much based around guns or some sort of firearms defense and all that kind of thing.
There's a guy in Germany.
All these people are now going to essentially be migrating to a new platform. And I think one of the biggest ones has started putting all their stuff up on Pornhub, which was like, wow. I mean, if Pornhub is more about free speech than YouTube, then that's something to worry about.
There was one time in a Brunswick local election when I looked at who was available in Brunswick, and of course the Liberal Party weren't going for it. And so I went through the policies of all the parties, and the Australian Sex Party was the only party in Brunswick which gave even any kind of faint praise for the free market. So I actually went for them.
Well, it's interesting like that, though. It's really interesting, but I think that every time YouTube do something like this, they really shoot themselves in the foot. They're the number one. I mean, it's the best video sharing platform at the moment. I think BitChute's going to take over eventually, just because of the technology that they use and the way that the internet's going. Like, they're based on torrents, they keep their costs down, and they support free speech. So there's a very big differentiation there. So I think long term, I'm optimistic, because now that people have access to the ideas, like to the more libertarian, classically liberal, freedom supporting ideas, now that these are actually out there and available, I think people sort of tend to resonate with them a lot more than they do with the older kind of ideas, because there's something very negative about the social justice, regressive, left-wing socialist nonsense that you get raised with in primary school and high school. I mean, I think there's just something inherently, people will listen to it and they might get angry or whatever. They might have a negative reaction to what they're being told. But then when they start hearing things that are a lot more positive, like freedom, or they start getting some better reasoned arguments and facts and all that kind of thing, I think most people tend towards those ideas. If you're in a relatively high IQ society, I mean, we don't want to be talking too much about IQ, but it's especially when you've got a relatively high IQ society, people do tend towards the better ideas. And I read somewhere as well that human IQ is actually trending upwards anyway. So I believe long term, well, that's a little different argument. But long term, I'm positive. But that being said, it's like, who knows what's going to happen from now in the next 10, 20 years. Yeah. I mean, we might end up in World War III.
Yeah, well, Matty, my little quip there, it sort of ties back to what we were talking about at the start, because if we're talking about free speech, censorship, all that sort of stuff, we look at the content of the speech. We look at the content of what Tommy Robinson was saying. Well, we look at the content of what, I can't even remember his name. As you put it out, they've raised him.
Dankula?
I can't remember his name. No, the guy who was banned. The guy who was banned from getting into England.
Selner.
Yeah, Selner. The speech that he was going to give, and the key point of that is they're trying to replace you. So yes, I'm positive that we can get the message out to people, but one of the things we've got to just always remember is that the fight is existential, and it's existential for them. It's existential for the people who are trying to do the censorship as well. If we win, they lose, and they lose everything.
And that's the thing. And if they win, everyone loses everything. So it's really important that we win. But that's that again. I think again because it's now cool to be I don't like using labels like conservative because it doesn't quite fit. But I mean, it's like you can say conservatism is a new counterculture, where conservatism is classical liberalism and just a general inclination towards true freedom.
Not wanting to be replaceism.
Yeah, not wanting to be replaceism. I think it's a better, like we have a better argument overall, and we're funnier, and our content's better, and it's more engaging, and it's a much, what I was talking about just before is it's a much more positive. It's people are like moths to a flame sometimes. Like you want to go towards positive emotions. People like positive emotions. People don't like negative emotions for too long. I mean, a negative emotion, anger, can give you a release, but if if you're angry every day of your life, it destroys you. Anger every now and then is very useful, but if you're constantly angry, then you're just going to burn yourself out, and ultimately you'll lose your soul because you're angry all the time. So people are sick of being angry, or sick of being, being silenced or being told how to think. Like Independent Man, as you mentioned, people who have those diversity in work all the time. You got like diversity training and sensitivity training, and and quotas, and you just get all this nonsense shoved down your throat. I think people want a breath of fresh air. People want to hear the truth, and this is why guys like Jordan Peterson are doing so well, because especially young men haven't had a word of encouragement sent to them for 40 to 50 years. So it's great that there are these ideas out there, and young men are being told, no, you are worthy. You can make your life better, and you should make your life better. And being a man, it's good to be a man. There's nothing wrong with being a man. And that being told that is such a weight off your shoulders. I can imagine for so many people who have been told that being a man is somehow something to be ashamed of, like toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I think that's only the new generation, because I certainly didn't grow up with that message. I went to school in the 80s. I finished year 12 in 1991. When I went to university in 92, that was about the crossover of 50-50 males and females university. I mean, I didn't get that message at all. I don't even know if I ran into a feminist on campus in the 1990s. I mean, I didn't live on campus for a start, but none of that was around. It was just completely absent.
I got it 100%. See, I
graduated 5 years later. And by that stage, feminism was well and truly in there as well.
Wow.
Sorry, Matty, you were saying.
I missed it all.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just cut out for a second there. So I for some reason signed up for an arts degree when I was 18, just stupidly. And one of my classes was sociology, which is literally just it's socialism. They basically teach you you actually get taught Marxist theory in sociology. So they teach Marxist theory like it's true.
Well, I did economics, and one of the first subjects in first year was economic philosophy and history. And we briefly touch on Marx, but it's basically laughed at. When I in the early 90s, because this was coming out of the Reagan, Thatcher, and the Labor Party in Australia did a lot of the same reforms that they did. And so it was it was all about deregulation and floating the dollar, competitiveness, flexible wage systems, and socialized healthcare was what we did here, and they did in the United Kingdom. But it was very progressive, pro-business politics, pro-private sector.
It was all Milton Friedman, Chicago and Austrian economics and stuff.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, not so much of that, but classical economics, Keynes. There was plenty of Keynesian stuff, but the idea of Marxism and socialism, when I went to university and did it was just laughed out of the room. I mean, it was just because it was a complete failure. I mean, I saw it. I remember I was in high school. I must have been about 16 when the Berlin Wall came down. And we talked about it back then. I think it was commerce class, it was called, because I think I was in year 10 or something. And, it was a good old laugh. It was kind of the end of history as it was written. Communism has failed, free markets, capitalism, democracy, social democracy has won the day. It's the end of history. And here we are 20 years later, and they've revived all that bullshit sneakily through the back door through their identity politics.
It's just all it's all rubbish. Just out of curiosity, because I didn't realize you did economics. Now, did you share this experience? I didn't even know what Say's Law was until 4 years after I graduated from university. So I did finance. Finance was one of my majors, and obviously part of finance is economics. I think I did quite a lot of economics while I was going to university. I'd never even heard of Say's Law until, like I said, 4 years after I graduated. And I'm like, how have they not taught Say's Law at university level economics? I mean, this is the first thing you should be learning. So it's amazing that they weren't teaching that when I don't know whether they were teaching it when you were going to university, but it seems like something that you should probably be teaching. I mean, it is basic economics. So I don't know. It's sort of like they throw it out like all of a sudden production doesn't matter. I'm not sure why they got rid of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think my degree was very practical. You know, it was like, this is how the economy works. This is how it used to be. This, you know, and it was a very pro-business, private economy, deregulation kind of view of the world. And I don't know what changed, because it obviously changed after I left.
That's the thing. It's like the course that I went to, the teachers that I had, they were more inclining towards that sort of belief system, or I call it a belief system. It's the facts of economics, you know, deregulation, lower taxes, all that kind of thing does lead to a stronger result and a better economy. But I don't know. I think it comes back to like Keynesianism, where, you know, John Maynard Keynes didn't understand how Say's Law works, and then tried to basically strawman it out of existence. And then the governments took that and used it as an excuse to go and spend a whole lot of money, because some guy that wasn't even a very good economist told them that they could spend money and make the economy stronger. So I think that's what's pushed that to the wayside.
Well, this is the conundrum we're in. I asked David Leinholm this when I had him on the channel, which is that how do you sell a message of economic libertarianism, that is smaller government and lower taxes, just the government, getting the government out of your life more than anything? How do you sell that message to a populace that despises politics and politicians, but their answer is always to ask politicians to do something else? They want government solutions. They don't seem to be able to recognize that government is half the problem. Yeah,
it's a tough question. I mean, this is my channel. I like making videos about economics. Like, my most successful video is the one the first one I ever really put time into, the Say's Law one, which is, you know, I'm glad that people are actually watching that one, because it's probably the most important one to watch. We sort of could lead into the next discussion in terms of cryptocurrencies, because they are the new hip cool thing. And I mean, you sort of, before we went live, you sort of thought that they might have been in the bubble. It'd be interesting to get more of your thoughts on that in the live stream.
Classic bubble. All the hallmarks. I was in the stock market working from 1997 to 2001. Now, that was a time to witness, because you saw the run up, the late stages of the tech bubble and the bust unfold. And I left, I think, a month after 9/11 happened. And there are certain hallmarks of bubbles that you see: exponential prices, you know, celebrities launching their own cryptocurrencies. This is just an absolute classic sign of a bubble. And just now, there are some arguments I've heard that, well, you can't look at cryptocurrencies price in the same way as you look at a stock price. You should look at it as an adoption rate, in the same way of, you know, adopting, say, smartphones or something. I've heard these arguments. I don't think anyone out there knows what any of these currencies are worth. You can't really value them. But I mean, one thing is that they're a store of value. Then they're a better store of value than fiat money, because fiat money gets inflated over time. Even gold gets inflated away over time, because there's, you know, 1 or 2% more gold produced every year. And so fiat currencies cryptos are finite. You can't mine any more after a certain point. So it is a store of value. And I wonder if that's because as a medium of exchange, it doesn't work that well, not yet. And most of the Bitcoins are held by a very few amount of people. There's no big take up yet. It's more of a sort of a niche thing for a certain generation of people that want freedom. And I think the big I think the big technology to watch is the blockchain. It's not the cryptocurrency. It's the potential of the blockchain. And if I'm not far enough into this to know what, should you buy Ethereum or Ripple or what, but that seems to be where the potential is. But I listened to a podcast the other day, a very knowledgeable guy came on and he said, look, the blockchain's been out there for 10 years and no one's found a use for it yet. And so I've heard both arguments, and quite frankly, I don't know. But I can tell you there are definite signs that this thing is in a bubble. There's no doubt about that. That's
the thing. I can see the arguments for both. I can see the arguments that, yes, it is a bubble. And obviously, it's got that, like you said, the exponential growth, and there's that mania aspect that you always get with a bubble. And my issue with cryptocurrencies in terms of valuing them is that anyone can start a cryptocurrency. I mean, you do have to mine them, and they have to have certain aspects that they have to fill certain technical specifications. But it's not particularly difficult to start a cryptocurrency. That being said, I just made a video based on cryptocurrencies because I do think that they are going to change the way the world works, and they are going to change the way that we do business. But I also make it very clear in the video that I'm not recommending specific cryptocurrencies to buy. I mean, I've bought cryptocurrencies myself. I haven't bought Bitcoin because it's like, well, it's $10,000, and what I don't see the point. But there are other cryptocurrencies that I've looked up on and they look okay. But that ultimately leads back to the problem is that if another cryptocurrency can come along that's a perfect replacement for the original cryptocurrency, or even a better replacement because it has more features or it's able to do a few things a little better, then I think that'll balance the value out. And maybe, I had someone tell me that they thought that Bitcoin was going to go to $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't know if it might go to $1 million, but I'd be surprised if it goes to $1 million because of the things that I just said, and that you can start a new cryptocurrency not all that difficultly. It's not like it's not like you're forging actual currency. It's not like you're forging paper money or anything like that. Now, you mentioned that they don't act all that well as a medium of exchange yet. The reason for that is obviously you can't. We don't have crypto cards where you can just go down and put money straight into someone's crypto account immediately. I believe that'll come as people sort of take them up. I do think they will change the world because of the way that they act as a decentralized replacement for money. So you take away the need to have any kind of central authority around money, because I don't know, you would have done economics, so you understand how Gresham's law devalues currency over time when it's when you have, like, if you have decentralized gold, then people will put a little bit less gold in and try and sell it as a coin and put a little less, and it slowly debases the currency over time. You can't do that with cryptocurrencies. It's impossible. Like one Bitcoin is always going to be one Bitcoin. So because it gets rid of Gresham's law, and it fulfills all the requirements for a currency, and it's unhackable in that you make a transaction, and unless it's verified by the network, then that transaction gets invalidated. So it does give you that trust and that confidence in the system and in the Bitcoin network and in the currency that you've got. So I do think it is going to change the world, and it's going to change the way we do business eventually. But again, whether Bitcoin's worth $10,000 or whether it's worth $50 or 10 cents or $1 million, I mean, how can you know? Like, how do you know how to value those right now? All I know is that I want money in cryptocurrencies just generally because of the way governments are. They're printing too much money. Like, even Donald Trump's new omnibus spending, where he's put in was another $1.2 trillion into defense over a certain period of time, and then you got all the spending going nuts in Europe and Australia. We're refusing to stop spending and all that kind of thing. So I don't see fiat currency lasting. Like, fiat currency won't last. Fiat currency always crashes in terms of paper money. Always. You can't trust the government to control the money supply, because it's like Gresham's law, except they have the power to debase the currency themselves. So I think eventually people are going to just take them up because they won't trust government anymore. But when that happens, and what happens, and how the process takes place, that's anyone's guess. I just know that cryptocurrencies are going to be money in the future eventually.
Well, people have been saying that about fiat currencies for, going on 100 years, and they've been holding gold and saying, well, and so you could be holding your cryptos till you're dead.
That's the thing.
That's the thing about it.
Yeah.
But I just don't think crypto. Let me put it this way. The thing with the .com bubble was that a lot of these .coms just were before their time. They weren't actually that bad ideas. They just didn't make any money. So one of the biggest poster children for the .com bubble was Pets.com. Pets.com was going to sell you dog food over the internet, right? Dog food, cat food, all your toys and accessories, and someone was going to get on a bicycle and pedal them over to your house and deliver them to you, right? Because there was no, Amazon was barely getting going at that time. Now, that was, people look back and laugh on that. But you know what? There's a company in the United States today that sells dog food online and cat toys and all the rest of it, and they make hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, the thing is, Pets.com was before its time. Now, what I'm saying to you is that so often it's the first people through the door that get the arrows in the back, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the cryptos that you see, I think there's a couple of thousand currencies now. I would say to you that most of those are worth zero. They're worth nothing. Some of them are outright scams. They're 99% of it's held by one person and all the rest of it. And, you've heard about the frauds and people being hacked and all kinds of things. I would say most of those are going to go to zero. Now, there's going to be a few winners, and I think there's going to be a bubble. There's a bubble. There's going to be a crash, and you're going to have to see who's left surviving. I don't think you have to pick winners now. I think you could wait and sift through the rubble and see who's still standing at the end of it. See who actually comes up with an application for the blockchain.
I think it's that's probably a reasonable argument to make. I mean, I actually cut out. I didn't hear all of it, but I would imagine what you said was very reasonable based on the last sentence. But yeah, I think you're right. It's probably a good idea if you are thinking about investing or taking it up, is to wait to see what happens over the next couple of years. But at the same time, it's like, imagine if you had the chance to invest and it went to $1 million. It's like that's what I feel.
I heard about Bitcoin. I was sitting in Japan in 2011 just watching RTTV, and this guy called Max Kaiser was on RTTV, and he used to say all kinds of weird and wonderful things. And he was, buy Bitcoin. I think back then it wasn't even $10.
It'd be a few cents.
And I looked at it and went, what the fuck is that? I don't get it. Yeah. And ignored it. So you miss that part of it. I think you've missed that part, but the next phase will be see who's a survivor at the end and get onto that.
Like who's able to weather the storm, whose currency actually has genuine value behind it.
I'm not sure that the currencies will survive. It's about, because the blockchain's different from the currency. Forget about just a medium of exchange or a store of value. What can you actually use the blockchain for? Now, people are running around saying that a blockchain could be the answer to something like the Facebook problem, because you should own your own data. And, if it's in a distributed ledger and only you have it, and you can decide whether you rent it out or not, that's an answer to these large companies, because they think that that's one of the big problems, that they own your data and they can do whatever they want with it. And you should own your own data. That's another way to come at the regulation problem, see? So maybe that's a use for blockchain. And there's all other kinds of use. I mean, people talk about, for example, buying a house and using the blockchain to settle those kinds of contracts again. And you can cut out lawyers and other fees. I don't know whether that can be done, but that's one of the uses. I think that's what you've got to look at. Can someone actually develop a real use for this thing rather than just a currency?
Yeah. Also, I don't know if you've heard of DTube and Steam It. I believe they sort of use a blockchain-based system for their video sharing.
Steam is a scam.
You think so?
Yeah, it's a bullshit. I mean, you go on there and they say so-and-so made $7,000 for this post. It's not real dollars. It's not real money.
That's isn't it? They just pay you in cryptocurrencies in their own crypto coins or something.
Yeah. It's a bunch of bullshit, but yeah.
I think if you're able to use the blockchain to make the internet uncensorable, that's certainly a use that everyone could get on board, provided they're in favor of a free and open internet. But like you said, it's that blockchain, the idea of updating, it's an updated account of who owns what at any given time. It's a good system for figuring out who owns this property. Like you could just transfer ownership to someone else immediately. So say you've got an updated ledger of everyone who owns property in Melbourne, and you can transfer that property over to anyone else who's registered on that blockchain network, or someone who wants to get into it. You can rent. They just set up an account and you can just send it over to them. But again, though, that you sort of mentioned that you could take the currencies out of it. I think that system would be a lot easier with cryptocurrencies.
No, I'm not saying take the currencies out of it. I'm just saying you need a definitive use for the blockchain other than just a currency, just a medium of exchange. That's what I'm saying. Otherwise, all it is then is a store of value. I mean, so your cryptocurrency never gets inflated away, but that's all it is. You've got to find a use for the blockchain, I think.
And I think a way of keeping account of who owns what in terms of property, and even you could do it in stocks and shares. You could do it in shares of businesses as well. So I'm sure there's plenty of applications in that regards. But again, someone will have to come up with some new app or some ingenious new way of applying it, and then as soon as that happens, everyone's just going to be like, "Wow, blockchain is the most amazing thing ever," because it is awesome technology once you have a look at it, and just the way that it's sort of. You can't corrupt a blockchain. Like there's no way of doing underhanded deals because every member of the network can see what's going on. So there's it's all above board, and it's easy to take, it's easy to keep account of, and it's easy to keep track of everything without having too much oversight. So it's a great way of decentralizing transactions and keeping the economy decentralized, which is why I think eventually it will change the world. And it's like you said before, it's like, will it change the world in 100 years? Will fiat currency destroy itself in 100 years, or will it destroy itself in the next 5 years? And it's funny. I did a video a few months ago called A Brief History of Money. And it's funny because you have some paper currencies will last 6 months, and then others will last 200-300 years. So it's like, you can never quite tell. It's like a famous quote I once heard was, bubbles will often outlast the reputations of the people calling them bubbles. So you never know when a bubble's going to pop. You never know when a system's going to change, or there's going to be a massive paradigm shift that just flushes the old one out. And you could be predicting it for decades, and then you might be dead, and then it'll happen soon after you're dead. But I mean, all I know is that that, like I said, blockchain is such an interesting new technology, and with all these applications, all these potential applications. But again, when it comes back to the cryptocurrencies, it's like, which cryptos are going to be the ones that actually work out? What applications are going to be the ones that people really take up and really get on board? And that's the part that I guess you can't really say it's impossible to predict it, but it would be very, very difficult to know what's going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years regarding this.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, people have a hard time just valuing gold. Cryptos don't throw off any cash. Like with a stock, it's easy. You just you forecast out cash flows and discount it back at appropriate discount rate. I mean, at the end of the day, a stock is just worth what those cash flows will deliver to you over time in the form of dividends and stock price appreciation based on the profits that the company earns. You can do this reasonably well, and you can sort of get a sense of what fair value for a stock is. But with these things, I mean, it's just pie in the sky. I don't know what crypto is worth. It wouldn't surprise me if it went down to $100. I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin ended up there. I just have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. And this is my problem with it as well. And this is why in my video I make it very clear that I'm not giving you advice. I'm not giving anyone advice on what to buy, because you're totally right. Like, it could go to $1 million, but it could just as easily go to $10 because there are so many other cryptocurrencies out there. But you never know. Like, predicting these things is is effectively impossible. It's still interesting to talk about though, because it's really taking us into a new era of how we're going to be doing business. But and it'll be interesting to see what happens just sitting back and watching the movie.
It's the thing about people forget about the internet revolution, the boom and the bust, is that if you look at sort of uptake rates, adoption rates of the internet, I mean, if you go back now and have a look at the stock market crash of 2000, 2001, it's just a blip. I mean, the internet did take off despite that boom, you know. So the initial cryptocurrency fallout, I mean, Bitcoin's down 6% today. This initial fallout may be just a blip on the way to something else. But, you know, your guess is as good as mine. There are really, really smart people studying this space. I've listened to a few podcasts and you know, they lose me after 15 minutes. I don't know what they're talking about, but I just don't know how to speculate with any. I mean, it is just speculation. I wouldn't call it investing in Bitcoin at this point. 95% of the people who are in Bitcoin are just speculating on the price. They have no idea what it's worth.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the thing. It's like no one really knows. Someone in the audience has sort of asked us about the energy costs associated with it and all that kind of thing. Actually, it's interesting. I had a comment on the video today regarding that. Now, when it comes, I mentioned before that the energy, like anyone can basically start a new cryptocurrency and all that kind of thing. One of the limitations on that is the energy costs associated with mining and doing this hashgraph mining, which I'm not quite all over, but I know it takes out a lot of energy to actually mine a decent amount of cryptocurrency. So the price does have to be high enough to make that mining process profitable. And it could spur some investment into some energy generation, which would be great for Australia, actually. Maybe we can put in a new nuclear plant or 2 nuclear plants and just put one of them into crypto mining. It might actually lower our power prices a little bit. But it's an interesting thing in that it's limited by that. So it means you can't actually bring it down too much. It's a really fascinating topic, and I'm not a total expert on it. I did make a video about it, but I called it Cryptocurrency Simply Explained. I tried to explain it as simply as I possibly could because I'm not by no means an expert on that space, and I don't understand the blockchain mathematics and the calculations and exactly how it works. I know what it does, but how they work it out. It's like I tried to watch a couple of videos about it, and it was really. They said, oh, you use this hash graph, and it's like hash graph 256, and they do this and they do that, and they blah, 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 and it's just straight over my head. But no, it was still really interesting the way they're talking about it, and it's definitely interesting for the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I mean, we've had a really good chat. I don't think we haven't really got any more questions in the audience. Is there anything you wanted to? I think David's actually dropped out. He just texted me before saying his battery's dropped out.
Oh,
so
right.
it might be a good time. And it was really appreciate your time. It was a really good live stream. Actually, you had some excellent things to say, and I'm sure the viewers all appreciate it. Is there anything you just wanted to add before we call it a night?
No. Go and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Of course you have. I would hope they have, because it's a really good channel. Actually, I watched the one on what's this? They're monitoring social media, and then there was the other one. What they had to do, there were gender quotas in the debating team. Oh yeah, it's just crazy stuff. Mark Latham's actually got he sent me it today, but he's got a article in the Sun Herald tomorrow, or the Telegraph tomorrow, covering that and covering this memo that I got a hold of from the University of Queensland about their new hiring policies. And as I said, I put that video out 10 minutes before we went live. So go have a look at that. That's pretty disturbing.
Yeah, I haven't had a look at it. I'll look at it once we finish up here. Yeah. Anyway, mate, keep up the good work. You're growing. I like your content. I think your content's fantastic, and lots of other people obviously do. So thanks very much for joining us today. Viewers really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for watching the live stream. Don't forget, we'll be back here next week, probably be at 9:30 again next week. Brought it forward for our very special guest. But yeah, see you around. See you when I see you, everyone.
Thanks, mate.